Snow fell in slow, shimmering flakes against the dark December sky, drifting past the twinkling Christmas lights of Manhattan. But high above the city, behind the frosted windows of a penthouse balcony, a man stood completely still. Adrian Moretti didn't blink. Didn't breathe. Didn't move. Because in his hand, he held something he had never expected to see again. A Christmas letter. Not addressed to him. Not meant for him. Not even meant to be opened by anyone except Santa Claus. But the envelope was torn now, slightly crumpled from how tightly he was gripping it, and as the cold wind rushed past him, one soft line from the little girl's handwriting replayed over and over in his mind. Dear Santa, please send a friend to my lonely Uncle Adrian. A man feared across New York. A man who hadn't smiled in a decade. A man who everyone assumed had no heart left to break. In 5 seconds, everything he thought he'd buried came crashing back. And it all started with the sound of a nervous voice saying, "Sir? I think that letter belongs to you." It had been 20 minutes earlier. Back when he was still pretending he wasn't human. But now, standing in the icy winter wind, he whispered to no one, "Sophie, why would you write that?" The story began earlier that same day, in a warm, bustling elementary school decorated with paper snowflakes and glittery ornaments. Inside classroom 2B, Elena Carter stood beside the mailbox she'd crafted for her students, bright red, decorated with stars and crooked candy canes. She always painted it by hand every year, just to keep Christmas magic alive for the kids. She was sorting through letters when she froze. Because one envelope was different. Expensive cream paper. Neatly sealed. A little heart sticker on top. But what really caught Elena's breath was the name scribbled on it. Uncle Adrian. And beneath it, almost as an afterthought, Miss Elena should be his friend. Elena blinked. Then blinked again. I should what? She opened it, thinking maybe it was misfiled. But once she saw the first line, her knees actually weakened. Dear Santa, please send my uncle a friend. He works too much. He forgets to smile. He is always alone during Christmas and I don't want him to be lonely forever. And then, the line that made Elena sputter. I think Miss Elena would be perfect. She smiles a lot. She's pretty. And she always helps people. Elena covered her face with one hand. Oh no, 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 no. She adored Sophie Moretti, bright, sweet, always trying to make everyone happy. But this letter, this was beyond unexpected. Still, she couldn't ignore the last sentence. Santa, he won't let anyone visit him. So maybe Miss Elena can give this letter to him so he knows it's okay to have a friend. Elena swallowed hard. Sophie deserved someone to care enough to at least deliver the letter. She Googled the address written inside the envelope. And her heart nearly dropped into her shoes. The penthouse belonged to the Moretti family. As in, that Moretti family. The Morettis with the quiet reputation that everyone knew but never spoke of. The Morettis who owned half the city's construction, shipping, security contracts, everything legal, and some things whispered not to be discussed. But Sophie? Just a little girl. Sweet. Innocent. And this letter, it wasn't dangerous. Just heartbreaking. She got into her car after school, hesitating only once before taking the bridge into Manhattan. Her heart thudded with every mile she drove. Every red light felt like a chance to turn back. But something about Sophie's letter stayed with her. He forgets to smile. He is always alone. I don't want him to be lonely forever. So Elena kept driving. She reached the glass tower, hands trembling slightly as she stepped out. The lobby was marble, gold accents, luxury she only ever saw on TV. The security guards eyed her like she'd walked into the wrong universe. I have a letter for Adrian Moretti, she said softly. Their posture changed instantly, alert, assessing. One guard spoke into an earpiece. Another scanned her ID. A third stared at the envelope like it might explode. After a tense moment, they nodded her toward the private elevator. Elena's heart hammered so loud she swore the elevator could hear it. By the time the doors opened on the penthouse floor, she wanted to faint. Or run. Or vanish. But she forced herself to step forward. The man who answered the door did not look like someone who received Christmas letters. Tall. Broad shoulders. Dark hair. Eyes cold enough to freeze the air between them. And a face that would have been breathtakingly handsome, if the expression wasn't carved from stone. "What is this about?" he asked, voice low, calm, dangerous. Elena swallowed. She wasn't sure her voice would work. I'm Elena Carter. I'm an elementary school teacher. Your niece Sophie is in my class and she wrote a letter and it somehow got into the mailbox and I thought maybe you should see it because it seemed important. She held out the letter with both hands, like it was sacred. Adrian stared at her for 5 seconds. Silent. Still. Unreadable. She wanted the floor to open up and swallow her. Then he took the envelope. Without a word, he tore it open. Read. His jaw tightened. A muscle in his cheek twitched. He read it twice. Then a third time. Elena felt like she was intruding on something deeply personal, but she couldn't move, couldn't look away. Finally, he asked, "She wrote this?" "Yes," Elena whispered. He didn't speak for a long moment. The penthouse was silent except for the muffled sound of the wind against the windows. Then he looked at her. Really looked. "Why did you bring it here?" "Because," her breath shook softly. "Because Sophie cares about you. And she wants you to have someone. And even if I don't know you, I felt like she'd want you to read it." Another pause. Not hostile. Not cold. Just confused. Like he couldn't understand why a stranger would do something kind. Elena cleared her throat and stepped back. "Well. I should go." She turned. "Wait." Her heart flipped. Adrian's voice didn't sound like his earlier tone. It was softer. Barely. "Will you stay for a moment?" Elena blinked. He looked almost nervous asking it. Just then, another gust of icy wind rushed against the windows, and he glanced back at the letter. "I think Sophie would want me to ask." Elena's chest warmed despite the cold. She nodded. And that moment, quiet, unexpected, fragile, became the first tiny crack in the cold armor of the mafia heir who hadn't let anyone close in years. Elena stepped slowly into the penthouse, unsure whether she was being brave or unbelievably foolish. The scent of cedar and something faintly smoky filled the massive living room. It was elegant, pristine, and completely devoid of Christmas decorations. Not a single wreath. Not a single ornament. Not even a stray holiday mug. It looked like a place where joy wasn't allowed to enter. Adrian closed the door behind her with a soft click. Not threatening, just final, like he wasn't used to having guests and didn't know what to do with the discomfort. "You can sit," he said, gesturing vaguely toward a white leather sofa that probably cost more than her car. She perched on the edge, unsure whether she should fold her hands or hold on to her purse for comfort. Her legs felt too light, her heartbeat too loud. Adrian took the armchair across from her, letter still in his hand. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees, staring at the small handwriting like it was a clue to a mystery he'd been avoiding for years. "She thinks I'm lonely." His voice was low, almost a murmur. Elena exhaled softly. "She worries about you." "A lot." Adrian's jaw tightened. "Sophie shouldn't worry about anything. Least of all me." "That's what family does," she said gently. "They see us even when we try to hide." He looked up at her then, his expression unreadable but his eyes, not as cold as before. Still guarded, still hard, but softer at the edges. "You don't know anything about me," he said. "No," she admitted. "But I know Sophie. And she adores you." He leaned back, almost startled by her calmness. Most people trembled around him. Avoided eye contact. Rushed to get away as fast as possible. But this woman, this elementary school teacher, was just sitting there with her soft voice and warm eyes like he was a person, not a threat. He didn't know what to do with that. She tucked a strand of hair behind her ear and forced a small smile. "I can go if I've overstepped." "You didn't," he said quickly. Faster than he intended. Her brows lifted. He cleared his throat, looking away as if annoyed he'd reacted so honestly. "I mean, you brought this letter all the way here. You should at least have something warm to drink." Before she could protest, he stood and crossed the kitchen area. The penthouse was open concept, and she could see everything: sleek counters, dark cabinets, an expensive coffee machine she wouldn't dare touch. Adrian made 2 cups of hot chocolate like a man who didn't do it often but still remembered how. When he returned, he handed her a mug carefully, almost gently, as though he didn't want to startle her. Their fingers brushed. Her breath caught. His did too, barely perceptible, but there. "Thank you," she said. He nodded and sat again, but this time he didn't lean back. He stayed angled toward her, posture subtly tense but attentive. Minutes passed in a quiet that wasn't uncomfortable. Just unfamiliar. Finally, Adrian spoke. "She wrote that I forget to smile." Elena swallowed. "She's not wrong." His mouth twitched almost imperceptibly. "Is that your way of saying I'm unpleasant?" "That's my way of saying you look like a man carrying a lot on his shoulders," she said softly. "More than one person should." He studied her, searching her face for something: judgment, fear, pity. She showed none. "You talk to me," he said in a strange tone. "Most people don't." "I talk to everyone," she replied. "No," he said quietly. "Not like this." A soft ripple moved through her chest. Something tender, unexplainable. She didn't know him. Didn't understand why she felt drawn to ease the sadness she sensed beneath his exterior. But she saw it. It was impossible not to. She took a sip of hot chocolate. "When was the last time someone brought you a Christmas letter?" He let out a breath, something between a humorless laugh and a sigh. "Never." "So this is a first." "Yes," he said, looking down at the paper. "And I'm not sure what to do with it." "You don't have to do anything," she said. "Just know she loves you." Adrian lifted his gaze again, slower this time. "And what about you, Miss Elena Carter? Why would you walk into a stranger's penthouse just to deliver a child's wish?" Her cheeks warmed. Because it mattered to her. He tilted his head slightly. "You care about your students." "I do." "Enough to face someone you should stay far away from?" Her voice softened. "You're Sophie's uncle." That was enough for me. He stared at her with an unreadable expression, something raw flickering behind his eyes before he quickly masked it. Elena glanced at the clock. "I really should get going. It's getting late." Adrian nodded but didn't move. "I should walk you out." He stood, and she rose with him. The walk to the door felt heavy with unspoken thoughts neither knew how to express. When they reached the entrance, he hesitated, hand hovering above the doorknob. He looked at her as if trying to understand something about himself. You're different. I hope that's a good thing, she said with a nervous laugh. It is. His voice was quiet, almost gentle. She smiled, small, hesitant, warm. Good night, Adrian. He froze for half a second. She'd said his name softly, carefully, like a word that deserved kindness. He opened the door for her, and the cold air rushed in. Elena, he said just as she stepped out. She turned. Thank you for bringing this, he said, lifting the letter slightly. You're welcome, she whispered. The elevator opened, and she stepped inside, offering one last polite smile. As the doors slid shut, Adrian remained standing there, the letter still in his hand, the slightest warmth still lingering in his chest. He looked down at Sophie's handwriting one more time. A friend for my lonely uncle. Then, almost reluctantly, he whispered into the empty hallway. She might be right. Elena didn't see him stand there long after she left. And Adrian didn't see her exhale shakily once the elevator doors closed, wondering why his eyes had stayed with her all the way down. In two people's lives that had been quiet and separate for too long. Something had begun. Soft. Unexpected. Fragile. But real. And neither of them knew it yet, but the letter Sophie wrote had changed far more than she ever could have imagined. For the next 3 days, Elena tried to convince herself that the encounter with Adrian Moretti had been a one-time moment. A strange, unexpected intersection of their lives caused by a child's innocent Christmas wish. Nothing more. But she couldn't forget the way he'd looked at the letter. Or the way his voice softened when he said her name. Or how empty the penthouse had looked, like a place waiting for warmth that never came. And every time Sophie hugged her during class, she felt that quiet tug inside her chest. On Thursday afternoon, while the kids were lining up for recess, a soft knock came on the classroom door. Elena turned, expecting a parent or staff member. But standing in the doorway, looking far too out of place between cartoon posters and crayon drawings, was Adrian. Her breath hitched. He wasn't wearing a suit this time. Just a dark coat over a simple sweater, looking almost approachable. But still unmistakably himself. Calm. Composed. Eyes sharp, searching for her. The children froze. Miss Elena had never been visited by a man who looked like he walked out of a movie. Sophie, however. Her eyes widened. Her mouth dropped open. She squealed, "Uncle Adrian." She bolted toward him and threw her arms around his waist before anyone could process it. Adrian, startled for a fraction of a second, rested a hand gently on her back. He always softened for her. That much was clear. "I wanted to pick you up today," he said to Sophie. "But it's not dismissal time," she replied. "I know." His eyes went to Elena then. And everything in her chest seemed to tighten and lighten at the same time. "I wanted to speak with your teacher," he said. A collective gasp went through the students. Sophie blinked up at her uncle. "Are you in trouble?" Adrian's expression flickered in amusement. "No." "Is Miss Elena in trouble?" "No." Sophie sighed dramatically. "Oh good. I was going to fight for her." Adrian lifted one brow. "I'm sure you would." Elena tried not to smile. She motioned toward the reading corner. "We can talk over here." Sophie skipped happily to her desk, and the rest of the children watched the two adults like they were witnessing something out of a holiday movie. When they reached the corner, Elena clasped her hands together. "Is everything okay?" "Yes," he said. But he looked nervous. strange on a man like him. I came to apologize. She blinked. For what? For making you uncomfortable. The other night. His voice was low, steady. I had no right to keep you there. I shouldn't have asked you to stay. I didn't feel uncomfortable, she said softly. He looked surprised. I felt, she hesitated, searching for the right word, unexpected. But not unsafe. Or pressured. Adrian exhaled, a small breath of relief. Good. She studied his face. Is that the only reason you came? He hesitated. Sophie, across the room, waved at him with both arms like she was directing an airplane. Adrian's voice lowered. I want her to see you outside school. Oh. The warmth in Elena's cheeks spread slowly. She does talk about me a lot. It's more than that. He glanced at Sophie, then back. She genuinely cares for you. She feels safe with you. And that means something to me. There was a sincerity in his tone she hadn't expected. Something vulnerable. Something real. And, he added quietly, I thought maybe you and I could talk again. Properly. Without me acting the way I did. Her heart thumped once, hard. You didn't act badly, she whispered. You don't know me, he replied. Maybe that's not a bad thing. Adrian held her gaze for several seconds that felt like something shifting between them, subtle but undeniable. Then Sophie shouted across the room, Miss Elena, can Uncle Adrian stay for story time? Elena laughed softly. It's recess soon. Then can he do recess with us? The idea of Adrian Moretti on a playground almost made Elena choke. But he surprised her. He didn't look offended. Or annoyed. Or amused. He looked at Elena, almost asking her permission without words. She nodded. And that was how, for the next 20 minutes, the most intimidating man in Manhattan found himself standing awkwardly beside Elena's class as they ran around the playground like a pack of buzzing bees. He didn't participate, of course. But he watched Sophie with a softness Elena hadn't seen before. A softness he probably didn't know he showed. At one point, a little boy approached him holding a red mitten. My mitten fell in the snow, the boy said. Can you get it? You're tall. Adrian blinked, visibly thrown. Elena waited, breath held. Then he stepped forward, retrieved the mitten, and handed it back gently. The boy smiled. Thanks, mister. Adrian cleared his throat. You're welcome. Elena couldn't stop watching him. When recess ended, Sophie clung to her uncle's hand. Can Miss Elena come with us today? She asked, swinging their arms. Sophie, Elena began. But Adrian spoke first. If Miss Elena is free. Elena's breath caught, her heart fluttering lightly. She didn't have plans after school. But the question wasn't about availability, it was about courage. She looked at Sophie's hopeful face. Then at Adrian's surprisingly patient one. I can come, she said. Sophie squealed again, bouncing. Later, when school ended, the three of them walked out together. Adrian held the door open for both of them, something instinctive and old-fashioned, something few people noticed, except Elena did. The ride to the Moretti penthouse was quiet but warm. Sophie chatted non-stop. Adrian drove with steady focus. Elena watched the city lights blur across the windows like falling stars. When they entered the penthouse again, Elena paused in the doorway. Something was different. There was a small string of Christmas lights along the kitchen counter. A single snow globe on the shelf. A scented candle flickering on the table. She stared. Adrian noticed. He cleared his throat. Sophie told me the place looked sad. Elena smiled, soft, glowing, heartfelt. It looks better. Sophie ran to her room, yelling something about showing Elena her drawings. Adrian stepped closer, voice low. I wanted to thank you. For what? For making her happy. For coming today. For not being afraid of me. His eyes met hers. Most people are. Her voice trembled lightly. I'm not. Why? Because I see the way you love her, she whispered. And people who love like that aren't as cold as they pretend. A silence stretched between them, warm, fragile, electric with something new. Then Sophie returned, breaking the moment. But the shift was already there. Real. Undeniable. Growing. And for the first time in years, the cold mafia air didn't feel quite so alone. Over the next week, something unexplainably gentle began weaving itself into Adrian and Elena's lives, quietly at first, then steadily, like a string of Christmas lights slowly turning on one bulb at a time. It started with small things. Texts from Adrian asking how Sophie did at school that day. A picture from Elena of Sophie helping decorate the class tree. A rare voice message from him, deep, careful, thanking her for making his niece feel special. But the strangest part wasn't the communication. It was the warmth behind it. Adrian was trying. Trying in a way that made Elena's chest tighten every time she opened her phone. Trying in a way that made her realize how unfamiliar kindness must be to him. By the time December 20th came, their paths had intertwined so much that it felt natural, expected, even comforting. That afternoon, as Elena left school carrying a box of handmade ornaments, she nearly dropped them when she saw Adrian leaning against his car, waiting. He straightened when he saw her, his expression softening the tiniest bit. You're early, she said, trying not to sound breathless. I thought I'd walk you out, he replied. She blinked. You wanted to? Yes. He hesitated. Is that all right? More than all right. But she kept her voice steady. Of course. He took the box from her hands before she could protest. What is all this? The kids made ornaments for the nursing home. I'm delivering them. Alone? His brows lowered. I do it every year. He thought for a moment, then said, then I'll come with you. Her heart skipped. You don't have to. I want to, he said. Let me help. There was no tension in his tone. No command. Just sincerity. So she nodded. The drive was calm, the winter sky dimming into soft evening blue. Elena pointed out the streets decorated with garlands and wreaths. Adrian listened quietly, occasionally glancing at her with an expression she couldn't quite decipher. When they arrived at the nursing home, warmth greeted them, Christmas music, cozy lights, and elderly residents smiling at her like she was their own granddaughter. Elena introduced Adrian as a friend helping today. It was the first time he'd heard himself called that. Maybe that was why he stood a little straighter. Or maybe why his eyes followed her every move with something like quiet tenderness. He helped her pass out ornaments, listened to the residents' stories, even held one man steady when he lost his balance. And each time their eyes met across the room, something wordless passed between them. On the drive back, snow began to fall, delicate flakes shimmering in the headlights. Thank you for today, Elena said softly. You're the one doing something meaningful, he replied. You helped, she insisted. His hands tightened slightly on the steering wheel. I didn't expect it to feel peaceful. She smiled. You don't get a lot of that, do you? He shook his head slowly. I haven't felt it in years. They fell into a gentle silence, the kind that forms only when two people feel safe around each other. When he parked in front of her apartment building, neither moved to open the door. Elena, he said quietly, turning slightly toward her. Do you think Sophie is right? About what? Me needing a friend. She swallowed, meeting his gaze. I think everyone needs someone. And you, he asked, voice almost hesitant. Would you ever consider being mine? Her breath caught. Not romantic. Not rushed. Just a quiet, vulnerable question from a man who had never asked anyone for anything. She nodded softly. I already am. His eyes flickered. Warm. Relieved. And something else she couldn't name. He walked her to the door, and before she went inside, she whispered, Good night, Adrian. And for the first time since she'd met him. He smiled. A small smile. But real. True. Heart-achingly gentle. She carried that smile with her through the night, replaying it until she drifted to sleep. 3 days before Christmas, Elena received an unexpected message. Could you come by tonight? Sophie wants to show you something. 7 p.m. If you're free. She read it twice, warmth blooming inside her. At 7 p.m., she stepped inside the penthouse entrance and froze. The entire place was glowing. Christmas lights draped along the staircase railing. Garlands hanging from the balcony. A tree, an actual Christmas tree, stood in the living room, half decorated, lights twinkling warm gold. Sophie ran up and threw her arms around Elena. Do you like it? I told Uncle Adrian the house needed magic. Elena laughed. It's beautiful. Sophie tugged her toward the tree. We saved the last ornament for you. Elena took it gently. But then she realized something. The ornament wasn't handmade or store-bought. It was a small glass heart. Clear. Delicate. Inside was a tiny piece of folded paper. She looked at Adrian. What is this? He approached slowly, hands in his pockets, eyes steady on her. Open it. Her fingers trembled as she unhooked the ornament, removing the folded note. When she unfolded it, her breath hitched. It wasn't a letter. It was a wish list. In Sophie's handwriting. But at the bottom, written in a slightly shaky adult script, were 3 new lines. My Christmas wish. 1. For Sophie to stay happy. 2. For this home to feel warm again. 3. For Elena to stay, if she wants to. Adrian ***. Elena blinked hard, eyes stinging. Sophie whispered loudly, he practiced writing it 5 times. Adrian looked embarrassed. I haven't written anything by hand in years. She couldn't speak at first. Her heart was too full, too soft, too overwhelmed by the gentle sincerity in those words. Finally, she found her voice. I want to. Adrian's eyes lifted to hers. Slowly. Carefully. As if giving himself permission to hope. You do? Yes, she whispered. The room fell quiet. Warm. Tender. Alive with something blooming between them. Sophie clapped her hands. Then you have to help us finish the tree. So Elena stayed. They decorated ornaments together. Sophie danced around with tinsel. Adrian hung lights carefully, checking on Elena every few minutes as if making sure she was still there, still real. Eventually, Sophie fell asleep curled up on the couch under a blanket. Elena tucked the blanket around her, brushing a gentle hand across the girl's hair. When she looked up, Adrian was watching. Not cold. Not unreadable. But open. Completely open. He walked over slowly until he stood inches from her. "Thank you," he murmured. "For this. For her. For everything I didn't know I needed." Elena's heart ached in the best way. "You did this. I just showed up." No, his voice was soft but firm. "You brought warmth into this home. Into my life. Without asking for anything in return." A silence stretched, full, fragile, warm as candlelight. "Elena," he said quietly, "I don't know what I'm doing. Or how to be good at this. But I know one thing." She waited. "I want you here. Not because of Sophie. Because of you." Her breath trembled. "I want to be here." His chest rose in a quiet, relieved exhale. "No promises tonight," he whispered. "Just this moment." She nodded. And then, carefully, gently, he took her hand. Not possessive. Not rushed. Just a soft, tentative touch that carried more emotion than any kiss could. She squeezed his hand back. Around them, the Christmas tree glowed softly. Snow drifted outside the windows like falling stars. And in the warm quiet of the penthouse, the cold mafia air finally felt something he hadn't felt in years. A heart slowly thawing. And with Elena beside him. For the first time in a long time. Adrian believed in Christmas again.